talking on the microphone, so just remember to be respectful and actively listen, and the willingness to explore new ideas. All right. So as we start up, so today we're going to look at two different approaches to giving: charity and justice-based generosity, and how we might shift our habits toward moving towards impactful, equitable practices. So I want to start off with an activity. When you hear the word charity, what comes to mind? And what about justice? You can either turn to the person next to you, or you can find a new body. If it's a person that you talk to all the time and you'd rather talk to someone else, here's your chance. Just share with each other what you think of when you hear the word charity and justice. And you can get into small groups too. All right, let's finish up our discussions. Anybody have any really insightful discussion that you'd like to share with the group? I'm sure you do. Come on forward and share with us some of your thoughts or ideas that you came up with. Don't be bashful. Oh, we can fix that.
Charity tends to be one-to-one, where justice is one to many or many to many. And in charity, the person is invested in it and they feel good about it and they're recognized for it. Whereas in justice, the person who's working for it might get harassed or even killed.
I think I've always been a little embarrassed about charity, because if our economic systems worked well enough, this charity would be so unnecessary. So I feel charity embarrasses me. Justice makes me feel great.
I feel like justice is something that everyone deserves, and we expect to have justice, whereas charity is like, oh, this is a nice thing that we're doing for someone, but it's if it didn't exist, I don't know. It's hard to say whether do people deserve charity, or is it just a nice thing that people do for others?
If I needed it for any reason, medical or whatever, and somebody offered charity to me to help me, I always say, yes, please, thank you.
Charity, I think of as giving to someone who's in need, whereas justice has a lot to do, number one, with the laws, which can be unjust and slanted toward people of privilege, but it also, in a more principled way, means that everyone has what they need to blossom and grow, and that's organizations can work toward that as well.
Charity is relatively effortless, and it makes the person providing charity feel good. justice requires work and may not be very comfortable for the person doing the work.
So we had talked about charity being helping others that are in need, that have some immediate need, kind of like what Robert was saying. An example would be a food pantry, helping people that are food insecure. Justice is like changing the systems that can help them to solve the root causes of homelessness or, jobs, that kind of thing.
So I'm going to show you a definition of charity. So often an immediate relief effort or a direct service to help someone in need, such as donating clothes, soup kitchens, etc. So the strength of charity is that it does meet the urgent or emergency needs, such as food or shelter, and it does encourage empathy and personal connection. But some of the pitfalls is that it might create a power imbalance between the giver and the receiver. It tends to address symptoms rather than systemic causes, and it can perpetuate dependency if not paired with systemic change. So let's add to this justice-based generosity. So justice-based generosity is a commitment to giving that dismantles inequitable structures. It shifts powers and fosters collective well-being, such as supporting mutual aid, organizing for policy change, or redistributing wealth. So some of the core principles of it is that you focus on the root cause, whether it's policy, systemic barriers, etc. It elevates voices of marginalized communities, and it seeks sustainable, community-driven solutions. So some examples are, participating in a mutual aid project, funding grassroots organizations led by impacted communities, advocacy around fair wages, housing equity. So I want to give some examples, some real life examples that our church has actually done and has been active in at the charity side and more towards the justice-based generosity. So PADS, which is a program, it's a shelter. PAD stands for Public Access to Deliver Shelter. So pre-COVID, because it's a whole new thing after COVID. So pre-COVID, each night it was at a different place, a different church. That church would host it, and they would take care of managing the food, managing the people that would stay there overnight, make sure that everything happens. And it moved around day to day to day. So the people that were clients had to know where it's going to be the next night. And it's not that it was all in the same neighborhood. It might be Wheaton one night and Naperville the next night, and so it was a lot of moving around. When I did it, I had done it with our church for a while, but I lived out west, so I was doing it with Kendall County. So I was going around the Kendall County churches doing it, and I did it at the UCC church in Yorkville. And the thing that I really recognized was the difference in power. how the people that were running it had a power. It was very inequitable as far as, you know, the clients there were treated like children. You have to go to bed at a certain time. You can only eat between this time and this time. You can only come in the building between these hours. It's very, and a lot of it is for safety, but it is kind of demeaning also. Now, that's not to say this is not a great program. I mean, to provide shelter, I mean, because they'd have hundreds of clients each night. This is a very important thing, and it is a good temporary, because it's not sustainable. You can't just keep doing this on and on and on. Check my notes. Oh, the other thing is that you had to share your sleeping space. There is a men's or male area, and there is a female area. And you're all in an open space sleeping together. And some of the facilities would have a family room. So if a whole family came, mother, father, child, the father had to sleep with the other men. Just the mother and the child could sleep in the room together. But there was a limit to the number of families that you could have. So it was kind of limiting. And the thing with this is that, yes, they provided shelter, but there was no follow-up. There was no, you know, if someone was, you know, sick at a facility or not feeling well at a facility one day, there was no one to check on them the next day. There was no accountability to see, you know, what's going on with that person the next day. So, it, you know, it was literally just a, you know, this night I'm going to stay here, this night I'm going to stay there, I'll get some food. But it's not sustainable for the people, not sustainable for the people that are doing it. So a example of a justice-based generosity, and it's not perfect, but it's a lot more detailed. So we did what's called bridge communities. So bridge communities actually came out of some people that used to do pads, and they're like, there's something we need to do more. And they created bridge communities. Now with bridge communities, they are taking a family that has been vetted to make sure that they are ready to move forward, to move into permanent housing. And they will take this family and they will have a mentor group for that family, and usually a church will supply a group of mentors. And with these mentors, they're gonna teach them how to do finances, how to balance a checkbook, help them with job interviews. If they're going to school, they might help them with studies, help the kids with studies. And what they'll do is they will rent an apartment, and part of the rent comes from that family, from the work that they do, but the other part comes from the church that is sponsoring them. So we're helping them get to that point where they are able to live on their own. And it takes about 3 or 4 years. I know, Jane, you had done that, didn't you? It was about 4 years per family? Yeah. So it was not easy. It was a lot of work. And it's, you know, one family at a time, but there's multiple churches doing it. And there's a lot of activities where we're raising money to be able to put towards the sponsorship, to be able to support the family. So that is, it's a step above charity such as PADS, because it is actually working to move families into being to living on their own. but it's not necessarily fixing the system, but it's definitely a step in that direction. So PADS post-COVID, so during COVID, of course, there was no churches that they could go to stay. PADS actually, they bought a hotel just on the other side of 355 in Downers Grove. They bought a hotel and have since upgraded it, so now the clients have their own rooms, or they share with one other person. It's not, you're not sharing with 50 people, you're sharing with 1 or 2 people, but you also have family rooms and multiple family rooms. They also provide, not on site, but a couple blocks away, they have a facility that does the helping with finding jobs, any health things that they need. So it's kind of a follow-up, but it is on the client to get there to do that work. So PADS has moved towards that, let's fix the problem, in that we're giving the clients tools to get out of being homeless, but we're still not fixing the systemic problem. And right now, I don't have an example of a systemic fixing problem as far as a group out there that is, going all out working on that. I know that a group within our church, that the Accessibility, Inclusion, and Ministry team, they have been doing a lot of stuff in Naperville, lobbying for fair housing for disabled, but also for people that need cheaper housing. So there is some work within the congregation, and so part of it is trying to create fair housing or fair priced housing, but also equitable for disabled people. So those are some examples, moving from charity-based to up towards justice-based generosity, but not necessarily the full path. So I would like for you to share within your groups, how do these approaches differ in addressing homelessness? Who has the power in these scenarios? And what are some potential outcomes, short-term and long-term, in these different scenarios? And you can even try to throw in what are some scenarios that might be more systemic. And there are index cards and pencils by the doors if you want to do some writing. And we will discuss. So we're going to do this for about 10 minutes, and then we'll share. All right, I feel a lull. Who would like to share some of their thoughts? So one of the things that kind of came up in this group over here is that it was mentioned earlier that social justice or justice takes a lot of work. However, there's groups out there, such as the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, that we give a lot of money to so that they can do all the work. So giving money is not a bad thing, but it's thinking about who it is that you're giving it to. Is it a facility that is just working to solve the temporary problem of where am I going to sleep tonight? Where am I going to get my food tonight? Which is a great thing. I'm not going to disparage that whatsoever. We need that. However, we also do need, let's think about charity as far as how can we make this solve this in the long term. And Alan, I'm not going to steal your thunder, so I'm going to let you share, like the story in Ecuador, how education makes a difference.
Yeah, Mary and I went with the service committee to Ecuador, and among other things, there we visited 2 neighborhoods, one which the service committee had been working with for approximately 20 years, and had facilitated things that a group in Ecuador had been doing. But in this neighborhood, we saw, certainly none of us would really have desired living there, but what we saw was paved roads, we saw cinder block homes, we saw, the only open sewer we saw was right next to the organizational building. So, you know, the people in charge wanted to just sort of stick it to that group. But the people we met there that were working were all young people who had been children growing up in that neighborhood. So this was we went to the other neighborhood where they just started. It was mud roads, twig shacks, open sewers, children playing in open sewers. So, I mean, that was the progression that we saw.
So part of the systemic fix is you start educating the people. As children, when they get older, they know how to build buildings that aren't going to fall down. They know how to dig wells. They know how to read. They know what's going on in the world. So that is a systemic fix over time, like I said, 20 years, but it helps. Gene. Oh. Anybody else want to share? Russ.
I think the point about the systemic change and going into justice-based generosity, it can't be said enough. It's not flashy, whereas charity tends to be flashy. You know, it's an event. Someone's the good person. And one of the things this makes me think is, for example, and this is getting political, but it's happening right now, USAID, a lot of what USAID did was for this systemic change to make things better for people around the world. Some of it was charity, it fed starving children, but it was also building things. And so what's happening is the public, when they say, oh, okay, let it go, because they don't know. Systemic change and justice is like watching the duck on the pond, and you see it going, but you don't realize underneath those feet are going like crazy. And people don't see it.
The whole difference between pads versus bridge. I mean, bridge, I don't think is necessarily trying to change the system, but they are at least trying to help people make their way through the system. So I think of it as another like charitable element that we need, but still there has to be more on top of that to change the system to work for people.
Are we still doing bridge? I didn't think so.
No.
Just one quick idea that I came up with. I did not come up with. I had a thought on what Chris was talking about over there was systematic changes. Charity is giving. Charity is nice. Charity is flashy, as Russell said. But systematic giving, systematic changes need to be along the lines of helping people help themselves. And sometimes that's structural and infrastructure, which takes time. And sometimes a smaller steps toward that is working with people like Bridges, but somehow that's more expensive and more time consuming. But putting it at an industrial level, systematic level, it seems like there would be efficiencies there, but you need to sell people on those efficiencies somehow.
And homelessness is intersectional. It's about education. It's about health. It's mental health, physical health, because all those things lead to whether you are able to sustain a place to live. Oops, sorry.
I wasn't here for the beginning, and I never knew the concept of justice versus, what was the other one? Charity versus just. And one of the organizations that I make donations to is something called Earth Justice. And I never consciously read about whether they were working to change the laws of, to preserve the earth for the next generations. I think that's what it is, but I will go home and I will read their statements and their annual reports to see what they're actually doing, and that would be now, in fact, I came today because I wanted to learn how to do that and what was involved in all of that. So thank you very much.
Yeah, so it's like, do they plant trees or do they have a, and it's not that planting trees is bad, but what is the systemic fix?
So I feel that charity work can lead to justice work over generations. If an immediate immigrant family comes here without the resources or the help of the community, how can they slowly progress up towards a financial ladder? So 4 years seems a lot. For other families, it might take 8, 10. But with the right support, and if the client slowly understands and start to, understand finances, how to navigate the system here in the United States, has the time and the resources to send their children to school, then the children become educated, and the children becomes involved in the community, and they can slowly have more resources to help with the social justice aspect. So charity work can sound flashy, but it can be also a building step throughout the generation to foster those conversations to help foster bigger changes, because some immigrant families still really need the help. You take that safety net from them, then it's just a perpetual cycle. But I also understand that some people might seem like they just want to stay on the system and might not think about how to move to a better self-sustainable practices. So from my perspective, it can be a double-edged sword, but it gives people the resources and the hope that eventually their children and their grandchildren can slowly move up the staircase of being a part of the community and giving back. It's a slow work, though.
Yes. Yeah, and as I've been saying, charity is a good thing. It's good to have charity. We need to have a lot of charity, but we need people also doing the next step to fix the problem.
I think part of what we're saying is if charity means that the client has skin in the game, they're more likely to succeed. So, for example, Carol and I both worked in Literacy DuPage, and it was a wonderful experience because we found people who were eager to make it here, but language was the barrier. So if you work for Northern Illinois Food Bank, you got people who are trying to make it, but they need food. So any of these things you do, Habitat for Humanity, great example. Yeah, you'll have a house, but you have to work, you have to pay, you're a part of it. That's a big difference, skin in the game.
All right, we're going to take that next step. We're going to start thinking about what is that next step? How can we fix the problem? So think about any recent acts of generosity that you've participated or witnessed. Was it more aligned with charity or justice-based generosity? What barriers or challenges might prevent you or the church or whatever organization from shifting more toward a justice-based approach? And name one next step that you can take to integrate justice-based generosity. And it might be, donating to Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, or you guys figure it out. So there are index cards and pencils if you want to write these down. Share within your group, come up with some ideas, and then we'll share a little bit before we end. So what things, what actions can you do as an individual, or we can do as a church, that works more towards the justice-based generosity? What is that thing that we can do, and what barriers might we run into?
I really like what Jean said. I think she's got something there. If I'm going to write a check to a charity, what are you doing? Is what you're doing just pure charity handout, or are you really enabling somebody to take care of themselves? Are you advocating for a policy change? I think that's a great thing. How do we spend our money? Where does it go?
Not that charity is bad. We still need that. But maybe think about how you might disperse your giving.
I think one of the first things that you have to do is ask what justice looks like, because if you don't have a vision of what justice looks like, then how are you supposed to know which kinds of organizations to give money to? And yeah.
We were just at the end there sort of honing in on the absolute individual opportunity to give justice-based generosity in conversation with people that you differ with greatly, but to find the generosity and the point of view where you don't know more than them, you know different than them, and what you want, the conversation you want to have is about trying to learn from one another rather than trying to educate or teach. And just that simple act of generosity could lead to a lot of change.
Along the same lines, we were talking about this. I find myself unable to figure out how to talk to people who differ from me. We tend to isolate ourselves from those people who are different from us because we think, well, they're wrong and we're right, and we don't know how to do that. The church, I would like the church to do something to teach us how to talk to other people whose opinions are different and not evil or not wrong or not any of those things.
Well, you look at the list that was created by DOJ. These are all the things that are fraud. Well, no, these are just things that you don't like. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean it's fraud. What action-based thing? It doesn't have to be action-based. What generosity, justice-based generosity thing can we do?
I used to work in a sheltered workshop in Massachusetts, and how I related to my, I forget.
Individuals.
Yeah, to my individuals was just like I would relate to you. I talked to them just like they were my equal. And we had conversations, and in times when I wasn't taking people to their jobs and picking them up and this. And just go, there was a floor where they worked. Some people were never going to leave the building, but we got jobs for them to do there. You ever get these things from Costco with the little, they're closed by these little round stickies. That's the kind of stuff that they would do. Anyway, yeah, I would just go up to talk to them. I had maybe 10 or 12 individuals who I had their cases. And I just talk to them. Hey, how you doing? Where are you going tonight? What are you having for dinner? How's your mom? That kind of thing. We were friends. Some of them didn't want to be my friend, but some of them were.
Thank you.
This is a point that came up in the Chalice Circle packet on generosity for this month. It was talking about paying it forward. The charity that giving to someone in need, you know, like there was a fella I was having lunch with at a restaurant near Midway Airport, and he said to the waiter, I'm paying for the meal for that family over there. Give the check to me. And they were so grateful and pleasantly surprised and said, I'm going to do that for someone else the next time we're at a restaurant. And that whole notion of paying it forward, even a small act of charity, can open up the sense of abundance that a person has, and I can do that for someone else too.
One more.
I just attended a great program at our church, and it was about understanding class in America, and it was fantastic.
If you want to see it, we recorded it, but it is not publicly shown on YouTube. But if you want to watch the workshops, let me know and I can send you the links. All right, we're going to finish with Daniel.
It's really quick. I'm wondering if the email group for that new justice group is still an ongoing thing and how we can sign up.
Anybody here part of that? Yeah, and there is a web page on our website. If you go to the justice menu item, there should be I think it's the first tab that is for this justice-based group that sends out like weekly things that you can do that are justice-based. And right there, that is some of it can be systemic fixes, and some of it is, you know, we need to fix this problem right now. But anyway, it's time to go because Mandy's going to come in here and kick me out. Thank you all for coming.